The Stranger by Albert Camus. The Stranger tells the story of Meursault, a French-Algerian man who lives with a striking emotional detachment. The novel begins with the death of his mother, whose funeral he attends with little emotion. Following the event, he continues his routine of working, meeting a woman named Marie, and forming an indifferent relationship with her. Meursault later becomes involved in an altercation on a beach, leading to him killing an Arab man without any clear motive. His trial shifts attention from the murder to his character and emotional indifference, culminating in his conviction. Meursault confronts life's absurdity, accepting the randomness of existence as he awaits his execution. Let's deep dive into the book. Meursault's emotional detachment. Meursault's lack of emotional response to his mother's death is a key feature of his character. At her funeral, he shows no outward grief, more concerned with the physical discomfort of the day than with mourning. This detachment defines his worldview as he drifts through life without forming meaningful attachments. His relationships, especially with Marie, show his inability to connect with others in a typical emotional way. This indifference is not presented as cruelty, but as a deep-rooted apathy toward life's norms and expectations, which sets him apart from society. The relationship with Marie. Marie, a former colleague, becomes romantically involved with Meursault after the death of his mother. Despite her affection and desire for a committed relationship, Meursault remains indifferent. He enjoys her company and the physical relationship, but when asked if he loves her, he responds that it doesn't matter. This apathy continues throughout their relationship, and even when she proposes marriage, he feels indifferent, agreeing only because it seems inconsequential to him. Their relationship illustrates Meursault's emotional disconnect, reflecting his broader disengagement from societal norms. The incident at the beach. The story shifts when Meursault, along with friends, encounters a group of Arabs at the beach. After a series of confrontations, Meursault, in an almost trance-like state, shoots one of the Arabs. The sun's oppressive heat is frequently referenced, as if it plays a role in driving him to this irrational act. Meursault's decision to fire 4 more shots into the lifeless body highlights the senseless nature of the act. This pivotal moment is not motivated by any clear intention or emotion, further emphasizing his existential detachment from the consequences of his actions. The arrest and trial. Following the murder, Meursault is arrested and put on trial. However, the focus of the trial shifts away from the crime itself and onto Meursault's character. His lack of grief at his mother's funeral becomes a key point of contention for the prosecutor, who argues that Meursault's emotional indifference reflects his moral emptiness. The trial becomes a societal condemnation of Meursault's failure to conform to expected emotional norms. The absurdity of the legal proceedings mirrors the absurdity of life that Meursault ultimately comes to accept. Society's condemnation. Meursault's trial showcases how society reacts to those who do not conform to its expectations. The court is more disturbed by Meursault's emotional indifference than by the murder itself. His character is scrutinized more than his actions, with his atheism and lack of conventional values being used to argue for his condemnation. This societal rejection of Meursault highlights the novel's existential theme of the absurd, how the world operates without any inherent meaning, yet people cling to artificial structures like morality and justice to give it order. Meursault's realization. As the trial progresses, Meursault begins to recognize the absurdity of the world around him. He sees how his trial is less about justice and more about conforming to societal norms, which he has consistently rejected. This realization begins his transformation, as he starts to understand that life is indifferent, much like his own outlook. In the face of an arbitrary legal system and societal expectations, Meursault slowly becomes aware of his own existential position. The sentence. Meursault is ultimately sentenced to death, not so much for the murder, but for his failure to display the appropriate emotions or moral behavior. Society seeks to punish him not just for his actions, but for who he is, an outsider who refuses to adhere to its norms. The death sentence represents the culmination of society's rejection of Meursault's worldview and its insistence on imposing meaning and order where none truly exists. It's not merely the act of killing that condemns him, but his rejection of societal values. The final conversation with the chaplain. In his final days, Meursault has a heated conversation with a prison chaplain who insists on offering him religious comfort. Meursault, however, refuses, declaring his atheism and his belief in the absurdity of life. He rejects any notion of an afterlife or greater meaning, affirming his belief that death is the only certainty. This conversation solidifies Meursault's existential philosophy, as he refuses to accept any false consolation, choosing instead to face the reality of his meaningless existence. Meursault's acceptance. After rejecting the chaplain's efforts, Meursault reaches a profound realization. He accepts the inherent absurdity of life and embraces the idea that existence has no higher purpose. Rather than despair, this acceptance gives Meursault a sense of peace. He finds comfort in the fact that the world, like him, is indifferent. He resolves to live with this understanding, facing his execution without fear or regret, fully embracing the randomness of existence. The conclusion. The novel concludes with Meursault awaiting his execution. He no longer harbors illusions about life's meaning or the justice of his sentence. Instead, he accepts his fate with a sense of liberation, realizing that, in the end, nothing truly matters. Meursault's journey from emotional detachment to existential acceptance is complete, as he confronts death on his own terms, free from societal expectations and illusions about meaning or morality. Let's meet together the main characters of the book. Meursault is the emotionally detached protagonist of The Stranger. He lives his life with a sense of indifference, showing no grief at his mother's death and no remorse for his crime. His inability to conform to society's expectations of emotion and morality makes him an outsider. Throughout the novel, Meursault grapples with the absurdity of life, and by the end, he embraces the meaningless nature of existence, accepting his death with calm resignation. Marie is a former co-worker and Meursault's lover. She is affectionate and desires a committed relationship, but Meursault remains emotionally detached from her. Despite her love for him, he remains indifferent, neither rejecting nor fully embracing her feelings. Marie represents the emotional and societal expectations that Meursault consistently fails to meet. The Arab is the unnamed man whom Meursault kills on the beach. The murder is a pivotal moment in the novel, though the Arab himself is not given much backstory or development. His death, caused by Meursault's irrational act, serves as the catalyst for the trial and Meursault's subsequent existential reflection. The chaplain visits Meursault in prison and tries to offer him religious comfort before his execution. Meursault rejects the chaplain's attempts to provide meaning through faith, asserting his atheism and belief in the absurdity of life. The chaplain serves as a representation of the societal pressures to conform to religious and moral norms, which Meursault rejects in favor of his existential philosophy. Let's explore together the main themes and concepts of the book. Meursault's detachment from society. Meursault's emotional detachment isolates him from the society around him. His indifferent reactions to significant events, such as his mother's death and his own crime, alienate him from the people he interacts with. Society expects certain emotional responses, and his failure to display them makes him an outsider. This detachment defines his relationships, particularly with Marie and the people at his trial, as they are unable to understand or accept his perspective. Meursault's indifference to the values and emotions society holds dear ultimately leads to his condemnation. Existentialism and the Absurd. The novel is a powerful exploration of existentialism and the philosophy of the absurd. Meursault's life reflects the belief that the universe is irrational and devoid of inherent meaning. His lack of concern for societal norms and emotions highlights the absurdity of trying to impose meaning on a meaningless existence. Through Meursault, Camus illustrates the struggle of living in a world that offers no higher purpose, where individuals must create their own meaning in an indifferent universe. Death and mortality. Death is a central theme in The Stranger, framing both the beginning and end of the novel. Meursault's reaction to his mother's death sets the tone for his indifference to life, while his own impending execution forces him to confront mortality. The inevitability of death, and Meursault's acceptance of it without fear or regret, is a crucial part of his existential realization. Death, for Meursault, represents the ultimate absurdity, an event that comes to everyone, regardless of how they live or what they believe. The role of society. Society in The Stranger is portrayed as a force that imposes order and meaning where there is none. Meursault's trial becomes a showcase of societal expectations, as his emotional indifference is seen as more of a crime than the murder itself. The court's focus on his lack of conventional morality illustrates how society demands conformity to its values. Those who, like Meursault, reject these norms are punished not just for their actions, but for their refusal to adhere to the moral and emotional codes imposed by society. The search for meaning. Meursault's journey can be seen as a search for meaning in an absurd world. At the start, he is indifferent and emotionally detached, but as the novel progresses, he begins to understand and accept the absurdity of existence. His rejection of societal norms and religious comfort reflects his realization that there is no inherent meaning to life. In the end, Meursault's acceptance of life's absurdity allows him to face death with peace, as he no longer seeks to impose false meaning on his existence. Let's talk about the author. Albert Camus was a French-Algerian writer and philosopher, best known for his contributions to existentialism and absurdism. Born in 1913, Camus grew up in Algeria and explored themes of existentialism, absurdity, and the human condition in his works. The Stranger, published in 1942, is one of his most famous novels, embodying his philosophy of the absurd. Camus won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1957 for his significant contributions to literature, particularly for works that grapple with the fundamental questions of human existence. Sincere thanks for watching. If you found this summary helpful, consider taking a moment to hit the subscribe button, like or share the video. If you have any feedbacks or book requests, make sure to leave a comment. Regardless, I wish you a great day.